Okay, this is recording to the cloud, and I'm going to share the browser. Here we go. And let me do one more thing here. We make this bigger. All right, welcome everyone to the February 2nd iteration of the MicroProfile live hangout / community meeting. Sorry, I'm still going to call it live hangout, old habits. And a link to the meeting minutes is in the chat. Please click on the link and add your name as a contributor to this meeting. And it is everyone's shared responsibility to take notes, so please help out with that. And did I miss anything? Oh yeah, this video is being recorded, and the chat will also be recorded, both uploaded to the MicroProfile YouTube channel. All right, looking at the topics, Kevin, you want to go ahead and take the first one in the releases section?
Sure. So I just put this in because releases was at the top, so I wasn't trying to become the number one item on the agenda.
That's before you start, John, are we going to look at the red line copy or something of the changes to the MicroProfile charter? Because that'll need to get teed up at some point soon for a vote, and the changes that were in there were the necessary changes for the shift to Europe.
When's the due date on that?
Well, there's kind of two due dates. One is like February 12th, and I think the other one's the 26th of February. So it's not imminent, but it is something that needs to get done in February. I did take a quick look at the charter. I mean, you guys could, it really is pretty straightforward stuff. It's just changes that were done purely to support the change to Europe. So my suggestion would be for folk to take a look at it. It's been mailed to them. Take a look at the red line copy and put it on the agenda for your next meeting.
Yeah, good idea. So we will do that. And is there anything that would prevent us from sharing that doc? You mentioned that you sent it to us directly.
No, it went to, let's see who it went to. It went to MicroProfile-WG.
Okay.
So everyone's got it. And just, just take a look at my advice is just take a look at the red line copy. It's pretty straightforward. And then if there's any questions on the next call, or ask them on the list, and we can just take care of the business in.
Paul, thank you so much for joining today to remind us of this. My recommendation that I forgot to send to the forum when that arrived, amazing, Sharon, and you rocked it within the last week. Community is that for us to, if we see issues, all of us, if we see issues, to ask questions directly in the thread and come up next week with the questions that might not be already solved. Yep. So that we can have it not for a vote, but for unblocking issues next call. I don't think it's a good idea for us to use this call to work on that. We can do that on that thread.
No, totally not suggesting. I'm just wanting to get it in the pipeline.
Okay.
So much.
I took a note to add it to the next agenda. Thanks for bringing that up, Paul. Good point.
Thank you.
All right, Kevin.
Okay, so as I look at the other items in the agenda too, it kind of goes along with the item that Emily and Roberto put in about an MP technical goal way at the bottom. So maybe we kind of come together on this. But anyway, this post, it was specific to open liberty. So, I'm not trying to, push our agenda or anything. But if you look at it from a, just a MicroProfile perspective, they're asking, well, when am I going to be able to use MicroProfile with Jakarta EE9? And, what kind of time frame? And even his last statement, I think it's a he, I'm not sure, he or she, the poster, and saying, oh, am I going to have to wait months before I can use MP with Jakarta EE9? I think that this is good input for us as we are trying to figure out what are we doing for our next MicroProfile release and how far out are we actually going to be looking at trying to support MicroProfile or Jakarta EE9. So I just wanted to bring it up. It just came up, to me over the weekend, and I thought it might be a good discussion.
Don't some of us, well, we do support, I mean, we don't support the latest MicroProfile APIs on either of our Java X or Jakarta versions, but the level of MicroProfile support we have works for either our Java X or Jakarta E versions because we use the transformer to transform the server. And that does address any MicroProfile APIs as well and implementations. So they all work. I think Payara is doing something almost identical.
Yes, correct. We do the same.
And so we could potentially, if there are other people who are in a similar boat, maybe we could just write something up that says you can use MicroProfile right now on Jakarta EE9 on these platforms.
Yeah, but then that's kind of skirting our specification because we state that we have dependencies on the Java X namespace. So I think that's going beyond what we are defining for MicroProfile right now.
Sure, but it doesn't mean that the specifications can't catch up.
So this is causing kind of this potential issue where I was taking a look at the release plan for MicroProfile Health. And so there, Stefan posted a release plan for that on the technology, MicroProfile technology site on the Eclipse pages. And it begs the question, what are we going to do for the summer release? Because if we do a namespace, right, Jakarta EE9, that's a big deal. And would we want to mix that with features? Or do we want the 5.0 release to be just, like the next release to be a 4.1 that allows for incremental updates, provide a little bit of gap between major breaking change releases? So this is, I think, bringing up a bigger, potentially a bigger issue.
Yeah, my opinion is that we need to support multiple then. Because if we switch to the new Jakarta EE9 namespace, not everyone will switch together with us. As I think most companies will even only consider EE10 as a valid base for new development. So if we now switch our entire code base to the new namespace, then we leave out all the other people who are not going to switch and stay on Java EE8, Jakarta EE8. So that means that we need, and it's not a criticism, but I think we need to support multiple streams, or how you like to call them, multiple streams as of the summer, for instance.
Yeah, we discussed this on the mailing list. So I think the majority kind of consensus, maybe the consensus is kind of support multiple streams. For example, 2 streams. One is for 4.x, the other one is for 5.x. 4.x will stay with the Jakarta E8. 5.x will be Jakarta E9.
Yeah, see, and that's kind of consistent with what we did when we were deciding to move it up to Java EE8. If you remember that, for just one release anyway, we had 2 streams going, and then we decided, okay, we don't have to keep the Java EE7 stuff, so then we just move forward. But maybe for this case, we have to keep both of them alive for a while.
Yeah, exactly. So for people for runtime to catch up, and then we retire the one is being old. So we have this conversation already. I think we just need to agree upon. I will put a link to the minutes.
And Kevin, this is a great question that you brought for us. How do we feel about supporting internally? Every vendor that provides support can do this, but how do we feel about waiting formally for MicroProfile release to go into Jakarta EE9 so that we can choose what APIs we will adapt? EE9 is just a name change, And I think we can support both. However, 10 will bring new features. Many of us are contributing to that ecosystem, and we should already be thinking what we would like to, to contribute to or something. But can we agree, or can we discuss what is the rush on pushing MicroProfile in the June or October release to be compatible with 9? I don't see it.
Our end users demand it apparently, so I think there's the rush in that.
What is Arjan? No, Arjan. Sorry about this. Rudy.
Edwin.
Oh, Edwin. I'm sorry about it. Where do we find that data?
Well, Kevin just showed it to us in a Stack Overflow post.
And,
so
if you click on the link, you will see the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
So
let me, and we
me.
received also 2 questions already, and I created a blog post based on that.
So let me remind you about something. So it's not only about moving our own namespace from JavaX to Jakarta. There's also work at the implementation level that needs to happen. And there's still also work that needs to happen even on implementations on the Jakarta side, right? So for instance, if you look into Spring, so for instance, Spring is saying that that one of the things they're waiting is to Hibernate to move to Jakarta namespace, right? So it's not only a matter of us deciding to move the APIs, because that needs to be synchronized with the implementation as well, because if we move the APIs but the implementations don't follow, then the user's not going to be able to use them anyway, right?
Yeah, that's
Well,
why
we have
suggest
both streams.
Sorry.
So on the concept of both streams, so here's the thing. If we there's a hard limitation that we need to be aware of. If we choose to go V4 is JavaX and V5 is Jakarta, it means that at some point we're going to run out of version numbers we can use to support the JavaX namespace, and many of us may need to support that namespace for a very long period of time. Right.
Yeah.
You can do 4 dots sequentially, a lot of numbers.
Well,
it's not one digit, can be many digits.
Yeah, I understand, but basically, if MicroProfile 6 is released, and we're at the pace we are now, which is if 4 and 5 come out this year, 6 is next year, we're absolutely still going to be supporting the JavaX namespace next year. And so we're going to be in the same position of having to bytecode transform 6 from Jakarta to JavaX so we can continue to support JavaX people.
So I'm just curious, David, what is our philosophy with regards to using other dependencies such as toggle Z to do feature toggles where we can switch between, let's say, JavaX and Jakarta as 2 different options that are continuing in, say, 4 and 5. And in 6, we probably just drop JavaX and just go Jakarta.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's no point in the next 2 years where we would be able to at all just drop JavaX.
I understand, but we can still continue with the toggle Z kind of an approach. It's a feature toggle we turn on or off and basically provide both implementations within the same code base. And it's just a matter of what people choose.
Yeah, none of us have been able to figure out how to do both features in the same code base in source code. We're using bytecode transformation to get both of them in the same. So we have the Eclipse transformer that takes the bytecode, and if it's in JavaX and you want to transform it to Jakarta, it'll do that. PyR uses it to do the reverse. If they have a Jakarta code base and they generate a JavaX code base.
Yeah, got it.
But we're all basically using the transformer in various capabilities to achieve both namespaces. Can we, in some way, make it, I made the statement that many of us already do support the Jakarta namespace, and Kevin said the specification doesn't address that. can we make the specification say a vendor is allowed to do that? Or
I just want to highlight another option for the APIs that
yeah, we could use qualifiers too. I think it's
qualifiers, and indeed, yeah.
And this is right now because JavaX and Jakarta are one-to-one parity sans the package names.
At the moment.
And that's going to change, right? So eventually, yeah. So eventually Jakarta will probably have a different set of implementations or whatever have you, and we'll have to diverge from this track as well. So for now, I think
a transformation, but they would have diverged, right?
But what if I, after this meeting, create a pull request that rebases MicroProfile 401 master with the dependencies from Jakarta, with the Jakarta namespace, and create the branch then?
Edwin,
Will that, will that be something that we can pursue or at least kickstart? And if we, in the next few days or weeks, find that it is valuable to release, then we can just do that, right?
And the question is, what number will you give to that? And I assume now also what David mentioned, if we reserve the 5 for the Jakarta namespace, what if we need to do a breaking change within the old Java X namespace?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So
that's what.
All right. Well, then just jump to 10.
I think is if you want to break a change like 4.x or 5.x, so it's basically no breaker changes. If you do breaker changes, that will be a 6.
I think it's not a big deal. If we want break a change, first of all, probability is low, and second is we just agree that we will break a change in the minor version upgrade, and we will declare it and we will communicate it. That's it. I don't see a big issue here.
Dmitry, do you think that the breaking changes will be limited when we align ourselves too closely into the Jakarta IE technology?
I don't think that we will have breaking changes in MicroProfile 4.0, to be fair. I think,
we do frequently have breaking changes, but
we could, for instance, on a MicroProfile 5, we could maybe have 2 classifiers, one for Jakarta, another one for JavaX, and you do release APIs on both Jakarta and JavaX namespaces, and then each implementation should just choose which one to use, and it will be like a more smooth transition, and then you can just drop JavaX on MicroProfile 6, or keep supporting if that's still required.
Yeah, so that works very well. If we have, I guess, one-to-one parity, we can just do some sort of string templating of the package names and run it twice to produce 2 different source codes and whatever, and 2 different binaries at the end of it. My only concern is there already any kind of change other than the package name between Java X and the Jakarta namespaces, that is Jakarta E8 and 9?
No.
Not for at least a year.
Okay,
Right.
so
not for the dependencies that we have anyway from a MicroProfile perspective.
Yeah. Okay, that's good enough. So I guess we could definitely investigate options to create 2 separate binaries, change our source code to actually just be string templates rather than actual Java code, and it generates 2 flavors of the Java code.
Yep.
So essentially 2.
Yeah, just to FYI, Chandra, you keep mentioning source code solutions. It's already solved at the bytecode level, so we wouldn't need to do any of these source code solutions.
Okay, so, my apologies.
FYI,
my apologies. Yeah.
No, it's okay. But you know, yeah, we do have the ability to produce both binaries as
okay
already. So it's already a capability, and you just need a plugin in your Maven form, and it's done, right? So it's actually pretty non-intrusive from that perspective.
I understand, and that's a much cleaner solution, lesser maintenance. So absolutely, yes, point taken.
I love your problem-solving capabilities, though. By the way, I think I love your heart. That's fantastic. So the question is, do we want to do that? Do we want to use classifiers or versions? Versions have, and we can change our mind later. We could say, well, going to use one for a while until the JavaX namespaces and Jakarta namespaces actually do diverge, which is going to be 10.
Folks, I don't think that this is the right solution, to be fair, right? So I think we are
There was
just
two options. Which one is this?
Unnecessary complications. So
Which one is this? I said there was two options. I don't know which one you mean is the one you say this.
Okay, that's good question. I'm talking about adding classifiers.
Okay.
I think that we should just continue evolving MicroProfile. And if we switch into Jakarta in version 5, we're just making non-innovations there. And we are just supporting branch 4 for smaller changes, which should not happen. That's it. So I don't see any point of making things complicated.
Right. So are we allowing vendors to do the transformation? Because we are already doing it.
No, or if you're already doing that, then it's allowed, is it?
Well, yeah. I mean, so that's this conversation started with Kevin saying that someone said they can't use MicroProfile and Jakarta 9 together, and it's not actually accurate.
Now,
yeah,
and I kind of agree with him because one point is to use APIs natively. So there are binaries, you use the binaries, or you are using binaries, they're sophisticated way. So you take the binaries, convert them somehow, use them, right? So are you allowed to use it? Yes. Is it the proper way to do it? No.
Well, let me explain here though. From an open liberty perspective, we have been very careful because we did not want to come out and say, oh, sure, you can use MicroProfile 4.0 with Jakarta EE9, because we as a community, we haven't decided that that is a viable, spec option. I mean, because once you start to jump that and, without the agreement from the community, then, okay, who's deciding the rules? Is it the implementers that are deciding it, or is it the spec? So that's why I'm hesitant with doing this, but if we as a community that we're going to do this, then, I'm sorry,
Kevin, I didn't hear
the point that so the question, if I understood correctly, is about first deciding if MicroProfile 4 should be run in Jakarta 9. Is that it? Or should we be able to give that option at the spec level?
Yeah, well, since we haven't, and okay, 99% sure it's not going to make, from a functional standpoint, that's going to make any difference to our MicroProfile specs if we move from Jakarta EE8 to 9. But to make that statement, I think we have to give it a little more due diligence than just, a 5-minute discussion that says, yeah, we ought to support that.
If we like the community, we claim this one, and surely we have to test it first, right?
Yeah, honestly, I don't agree that we should say that the MicroProfile 4 works on Jakarta 9, because we built MicroProfile 4 with Jakarta 8 in mind, not 9. So if and we made all the releases and all the approvals with that in mind. So if we go now and say, hey, now it works with the Jakarta 9, I don't have any reassurance on that. We never tested it. I mean, of course, it works with all of these crazy workarounds, but it was never meant to be done that way, right?
But we could do it with a 4.1/5 release if we do the 2 streams approach, right? Then we could pre-define that as a requirement.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
sure. I agree that if we want to do that, it will have to be a new version, either 4.1 or 5, but not on 4. That's already released. That already is gone.
Yes. I think this is in line with the technical discussion Roberto and I started. Yeah, I think we can talk about whether we can start 5 imminently, and just like to do the Jakarta E9 alignment, and then at the same time doing a 4.1, and then we could do a 5.1 to get all the functionality in parity.
And whatever version number we give it, we need to provide a Maven POM file, which refers to EE9
Yes.
specs. Because otherwise, if you just use, like now, the 4.0 POM file, then you get the old CDI2 instead of the CDI3, for instance. So it is a new release is definitely required.
Yeah.
So I have a question. In the context of the example I gave where, Martin's created the release plan for health 3.1, is the proposal by having potentially 2 streams to introduce that version of, it's not really health, it's any new revved version of a spec to do it in both 4.1 and 5?
I think we should like personally, I think we should start like 2 streams ASAP and do 5.0 to move up Jakarta E9 so that all the spec when they do the any feature adding and etc. they do on both those streams.
Yeah.
So we should bring all streams together.
I think you're suggesting something that I was thinking to ask a question about, which is it would, if 4 and 5 are basically going to be identical minus the Java X to Jakarta switch, and we're intending to keep them in sync, could we just release a 5 so that way when we release 4.1 there is a 5.1 that goes with it?
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking as well. So we should do that maybe the ASAP to get the release out.
So let's go ahead.
So we're just doing parity releases on 5 compared to 4.
Right, and the difference would be Java X to Jakarta, and it would line up by the point version, so it wouldn't be confusing like, well, 4.1 and 5.0 are the same, and 4.2 and 5.1 are the same. It would be, we're going to get a 5 out now, so that way when we do release 4.1, we would have to release a 5.1. It might be the same, but at least that the versions line up, and we've made it less confusing for people.
Or alternatively skip 5.0 and just call it 5.1.
Good.
Yeah, I thought that Dave was mentioning that. Yeah.
But I think that the other, I did, Roberto and I talked, is a kind of, Roberto has a valid point saying if you migrate from 4 to 5.1 directly, you have a namespace change and plus functionality things. It might be difficult to debug. I think that's a valid point. I think is release a 5 and then that's kind of only Jakarta namespace change. That's much simpler. If you have more things, difficult.
I agree.
So then,
that's why I was saying that. So if you look on, we can use some of the experience that was gained on Jakarta side, right? So you know that we had a freeze on 8 and we done 9 and we have absolutely no change, right? So for me, it's kind of like confusing that we're going to do like 4.1, 5.1, whatever, where we're going to mix namespace changes with API changes. So at the very least, if we want to go that route, that's why I was suggesting that 5 should also release on the JavaX namespace, and we keep the streams as classifiers and not as versions, because then when you move, you can either move as a namespace and as an API break, or you can just do API break and don't worry about the namespace and just do it later. That's just an option, right?
So I almost have to take back my prior statement, because there's one thing that we've been adhering to pretty strictly, and that is semantic versioning. So we wouldn't want to call it 5.1 if it included breaking changes. We would want to have a 5.0 that was breaking changes before we went to a 5.1.
We haven't been strict with that at all.
yeah.
Where did we?
When we shifted from fault tolerance 1.2 to 2.0, we did that on a minor release of the MicroProfile platform, not a major release.
Was that after we decided semantic versioning or before?
Well, it was after.
Yeah.
Bad us.
Yeah,
we're not good with that at all. We don't follow that rule.
Okay.
So hold on a second.
I retract my statement.
Roberto brought a very interesting point. Let me interject here.
That we shouldn't. We just haven't.
So let me interject here. In the website, we have the version releases. If we're going to have 2 versions, say 4 and 5, now that area will change and will be a little bit smaller, so that if we do this, we're doing it so the adapters, the users, are able to use whatever they want of the 2 options. But this needs to be illustrated in the website. What I'm thinking is, not only do we need blogs, but how do we make it so that this is easier? We are 30 minutes into the discussion and all of us have different ideas and we're not really agreeing on how to move forward. But whatever we do, it needs to be so clear in the website. And if we do the versions, there will be, do you understand what I mean? How
to be honest, I think the website is the less of concerns right now, because after we pick up the solution to use, the website's going to be very clear. I mean, actually, the solution that we get to the website, then it's going to be clear after we pick the solution to follow on the versioning or classifiers or whatever. That will just come later. I don't think we should put the website issue in front on this decision, right?
Yeah,
it's not the website that should drive this decision.
Yeah, I know this, but communicating is the most complex thing in the world.
Sure, but that will come later.
Yeah.
Right.
Can we decide what we're communicating before we decide how we're going to communicate it?
Right. Can I just propose something? Can I how about I will continue with not continue, start a new conversation and list our options, and then and then if the options are clear, I mean option A, do the Jakarta E9 alignment for the 5.0. And then it's kind of we continue for 5.1 with the functionality changes, and then plus some other options, and then it's clear. So hopefully next week we make a conclusion and work on that.
Yeah.
So
is that okay?
June?
Can we? I like the idea that we're going to tackle this with specific MicroProfile versions. That's good. Do we want to make a statement? Because I know, at least from the, Payara and Tommy perspective, we're going to be supporting both namespaces for quite a while. Are we going to say that that's allowed? Or is it just going to be a vendor specific thing? It's okay if it's a vendor specific thing. It's where it is now.
I think 4.0 has released. I don't think we should reopen it and add anything else. I think that's.
I'm not saying we have to open releases. Do we want to make a statement about it in any kind of MicroProfile sense?
I think it's going to be.
What kind of statement are you going to propose, David?
Well, I mean, right now, if someone is concerned that they can't use MicroProfile in Jakarta, there are options that would allow them to do that. Do we want to say that that's an option to people? Do we want to endorse it?
I think that we kind of need, well, okay, so now I'm kind of reading into where Emily's proposal is going to go. But let's pretend that we're going to do a MicroProfile 5.0 that supports Jakarta E9. Through that exercise, then we will have more data to support, a statement such as what you're proposing, David. I mean, right now, I don't know that we should, but maybe after we get more data, then we could make a statement like that.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'm thinking maybe is even in April, we are able to even release Jakarta E9 alignment, like a MicroProfile 5.0, if we start on work on it from next week. Okay.
I think it's fine for vendors to come in and say, okay, here's a platform and you're able to run MicroProfile 4 with Jakarta 9 following these steps. But as a community and as a MicroProfile group, I don't think we should do that until we have an API ready for Jakarta 9.
Yeah.
So we want to make it clear. MicroProfile 4 is for Jakarta 8, MicroProfile 5 for Jakarta 9, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me, right?
Sounds like that's what's decided.
So then
But
I am hearing that we will do this before June. So then in June, we're talking about new features for the release, or
5 would be no features change. It would be as we did for Jakarta EE 8 to 9. It would be just a namespace only change. At least that's what I'm understanding from the consensus. So
Yeah,
I
but what
understand.
it,
But what I'm talking is about, this is going to happen likely before June release. It's going to be a minor release or that kind of thing. What I'm talking about, if we do this before the June release, what are we going to share on that one? Or are we just going to pilot and make it two streams?
So again, I don't think we should stick ourselves with dates or months these days. I don't care about June or May or October release. We just have to figure out what we're going to do, and then we can figure the dates and releases later.
exactly.
From my perspective, I think we have two options. We either go to MicroProfile 5, which is Jakarta 9, and MicroProfile 4 to stay with Jakarta 8, which means they're not going to do any breaking changes. So we're going to slow down on our innovation, right? Because we don't want to introduce those changes on the APIs to make sure that those are exactly the same. Or
Stop. Why do we want to do it? Just stop 4 and do all innovations in 5.
Well, I mean, because we're mixing a namespace change with innovation at the same time.
We're not mixing anything. We're not mixing anything. We're just evolving. So now we are at 4. We're innovating in 4. After, in June or whatever time frame, we're jumping to 5 and starting innovating at 5. So supporting 2 JavaX plus Jakarta namespaces is overhead.
No, but what's your proposal? Your proposal is to actually do the namespace change to Jakarta in 5 and also add new APIs at the same time?
No, hold on. So I was under the standing earlier in the conversation that we discussed we weren't going to be ditching either namespace, that we needed to support both for a while at least. And we were discussing how we're going to do that. So I was under the impression that if we were going to have a 5 and a 4, they would move in parallel and be parity, and it would be the same minus the namespace change. So if we did a feature change in 4.1, that we do the same thing in 5.1. We could release them both at the same time.
Do we really need to do it?
Well, yeah, I think both. Well, I mean, Rudy, you can echo your statement. We'll be supporting both namespaces for a while.
Yeah, we cannot afford to say that we only do innovation in the Jakarta EE9, because then means that all our users need to switch to something which is supporting that EE9, and that can maybe take more than 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want to say, because we do innovation in Jakarta EE9, and it will also push forward Jakarta EE9 itself. Right. So now we are playing kind of double game. We are supporting 2 namespaces, which will slow down the innovation and add a necessary complication to all the source code, the release process, and everything.
But I don't think the users are ready for that.
Plus one.
Why do you think that the users are not ready for that? Why are we switching to Jakarta EE9 in this case, if we don't think that users are ready for that?
You know what?
Let's take a year. Let's innovate in Jakarta, in JavaX namespace then, and in a year switch to Jakarta namespace.
We can't change the JavaX namespace.
But Dmitry, you brought something.
He didn't mean, John. He didn't mean.
No, I gotcha.
He meant building innovative MicroProfile APIs on top of the Java.
No, I got you after the fact. Yeah.
Dmitry, when you said, I don't want to project, but when you stated your feelings or your thoughts on stopping the support for Java EE8, that is a concern that I have on the other side, because you're saying this will help Jakarta EE move forward and innovate. But I am also, and I have been concerned from the start about our reliance in the technology. We support each other, but innovation, we use other technologies beyond Jakarta EE. I am, and I will echo again, afraid that we will link the technology so much to one user, and instead of zooming out and being independent. as much as we can. Independence, technology speaking, matters so that there is diversity and there is technology advancement. And if we give in because we think it's not going to hurt us later, at the end of the day, we will have one technology and no diversity. So I ask everyone here, are you thinking with a zooming out mind of the future and the other technologies that we can acquire and support as well? Or are you just focused on one technology? And now I stop the mute and I want to hear what others think.
Well, I'm going to pause here for a second for a time check. So we have two more, I think, or there's a few more items. Martin has a question. Andy has an item. Edwin, I'm hoping, Edwin, that we can tackle yours in the community.
Yes, Dave. You should.
So Andy, how much time do you think that you'll need?
Probably more than we have left, especially if we want to get to
Okay.
the other items.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. If we could tackle that this week, and we'll see if we can move it higher next week. If we need to continue the conversation, let's have it offline. Martin, I think, has a very quick one. So let's give him just a little bit of time at the end of this discussion. So I'm trying to figure out now. There's two folks that were, and you probably saw me scrolling through this. I was trying to compare the folks that were on the thread that are also on the call, and Edwin and Scott were on the thread. And I'm kind of curious about what your thoughts are about the discussion of so far happening on this call.
Yeah. Okay. It's a difficult topic, of course. Maybe I just don't understand it all correctly, but we have three things. We have end users, and there's no one asking for alignments between Jakarta E9 and MicroProfile latest 4.0 or later. There's a vendors needing to support that, and there's MicroProfile and Jakarta providing specifications, right? So that has to be aligned. So when we were talking about the streams, I was thinking if we can, who is benefiting the most from a fast delivery of alignment between Jakarta E9 and MicroProfile? Is that the user requesting for it? Is that us vendors supporting it or not? Or is that the projects themselves, MicroProfile and Jakarta? So let's say we create two streams now, hypothetically, to deliver MicroProfile 5 fast, and vendors can then implement it fast and deliver a quick, desired way to present the alignment of Jakarta E9 and MicroProfile 5 with the namespace Jakarta to users. Would that make them happy? Is that the thing they want solved? Or because there's a hidden extra message in the stack, what was it? How is it called? The Stack Overflow post that says, oh no, I have to wait months. Are we going to let him wait months, or are we willing or prepared, or can we deliver faster than June, saying it will take months? So I'm kind of puzzling, and I'm understanding or trying to understand everybody's intentions, but yeah, how can we decide on what is the most beneficial way to go now? Is it creating streams, or cut 4.0 off and go straight with 5 and innovate there? That's why I'm okay. Yeah.
No, I'm just going to pause that and see if Scott, if you wanted to add anything to the conversation. Okay, Scott may not be at his mic. So any thoughts about what Edwin said?
Yeah, so just as far as who is the real driver or who benefits the most, I mean, you have to remember I brought this up just because, hey, I found some anecdotal evidence that maybe we do need to support Jakarta E9. And you can tell from the conversation on this call that there's a lot of passion as to when and where and how we should be supporting Jakarta EE9. I know Emily offered to start a new thread to discuss this, and maybe that is the best way to go. I know that we've been doing it here a little bit in the current thread, but maybe to make it very unique based on the conversation that we've had here, with the, having two streams and, maybe what the timing is for each of the stream, maybe that would provide a wider community discussion on this.
And I'm going to make a request on that actually as well. So it's good having the discussion in the forums, but I'm hoping that we can have like a document that shows option 1, option 2, whatever the options are, pros and cons of each, right? So we kind of like have, and we can have the discussion about what those things are
Right.
in the thread, but before we come back next week, actually have that list of pros and cons that we can discuss.
Yeah,
Let
and if
me,
you
let
have
me
that,
also add something else, which is we have to be very honest about this, right? So at this point, there is no really incentive for people to move from Java EA to Jakarta, right? So because the names that you only have namespace change. So you only, even if you have the binary compatibility, yeah, sure you can do it, but you're only going to get work and you're not going to get anything new out of it, right? So from what I'm hearing from other folks and some colleagues, they're just going to stick with Java E8 and they're just going to move when Jakarta 10 comes out with new features, right? So from our perspective on the MicroProfile side, it seems to me that if we go straight to Jakarta 9 and start to innovate over there, we're just going to leave all these people that are still on 8 and they're not going to move until they move to 10, right? And they're not going to be able to use these new features we develop on 5 with just 9, right?
That's why I'm supporting both.
So that's why we need to support both, because there's still a lot. It's going to be a lot of people going to still be using Java E8 for a long time until Jakarta 10 comes out with new stuff. Then they're going to have a reason to update. We've seen these on our industry and our community all the time.
Totally agree.
We have Java. We have people moved from Java 3 to 5 and to 5 to 8, right? Because they made those jumps because there were like features they wanted, right? And unfortunately, and because we have to do this that way, there is no new feature that will force people to move from Java EA to Jakarta 9.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the other thing is so for the vendors, they don't need to support every version of the MicroProfile. If like some runtime, they want to just support MicroProfile 5.x, yeah, that's fine. So, but this open door for the some runtime, they want to support both. So I think with what Kevin said, and also John said, I will create a Google Doc and list options so everybody can like commit and put cons and pros, and then we can bring back for a kind of vote or further conversation next week.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to try and just because we need to get one more topic. So kind of the action item is have this discussion in the Google group. It becomes a pro-con document. We can all do it next week, discuss it next week. And then my hope is that we can, after next week's discussion, kind of semi-commit to it with additional discussion, the following week in the forums, because we've kind of said that we're not going to make decisions just on the call. And that will be a decision for how we move forward. Does that sound like a reasonable thing?
Beautiful. And Roberto, really nicely written, stated.
May I make sure that one option is in the list of options? On the Jakarta side, we said backwards compatibility is not required, but vendors may do it. Can we have that as an option? Right?
Yeah,
Add it.
I think it. Yeah,
It can. Go ahead.
Yeah, I will create a doc, and yeah, sure, we'll put something in there.
On the Jakarta side, we say you're not required to support the JavaX namespace, but vendors are allowed to do that. And if we have the same flexibility on the MicroProfile side of the fence, no matter what we write down, it's going to be good enough.
Yeah.
As long as vendors have the ability to be backwards compatible, we're good.
Yeah, I will create a doc soon and then share on the Google group, and I will try to capture what you said, and you can check and correct it. If
Okay,
necessary.
and I don't know if it needs to be a new discussion thread. I think just continuing the current thread is probably okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I will create
and thank you very much for kind of owning the task and getting the doc put together. So I want to give the last just couple minutes. Martin, you had a question about CCRs?
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully we can go faster. Basically, this is question to Kevin and David because they have the most commands on the CCRs that we did for individual specs for MP4. Basically, what is required from us going on? At least for the specs that I did, we needed to create an implementation RCs which were stayed on central that are passing the stage spec TCKs. Is this required, or can we just zip the build that passed the TCK, publish it on the website, and this is enough?
Where you don't even have to have it be open source. You could have commercial implementations. That's up to you how you distribute the software. The CCR comments that I think a lot of Kevin and I made is that they need to be really super consumer friendly. They're not meant to be like, they're supposed to be incredibly consumer friendly, right? Here's the version of the spec we pass. Here's the brand. Here's the name and version of the spec we pass. Here's the name and version of our implementation. Here's our results, right? A summary of the results. We got all these, 467 passing tests. You have that kind of detailed information, and what Java version you used. These types of things, and it should be in a download link of your product.
A long-lived download link.
Yes. Yeah. So
I believe that one of the things that Martin was stating, and because that was one of the issues that we had when we were releasing the implementations, is to release an implementation that's pointing to a staging repo that's ephemeral and that's going to go away. And that's actually against the Maven Central rules, right? Even though if we release those as a release candidate, they're still there forever, but they don't work anymore.
What do you mean they're still there forever, but they don't work anymore?
Well, because they are Maven Central, but they point to a staging repo that doesn't exist anymore, right? Because it was released.
They're not there forever. So
sorry?
They're not there forever. Staging repos are deleted after.
I know, but remember, to release a compatible implementation, we need to point to the staging repo that's going to go away, or else you're not even able to build the code.
We don't need to include a link to the specifications staging repo in a certification request. In the certification request, you include a link to the implementation itself.
Yes, but to be able to build the implementation, you do need the API, right? How do you download the API?
That's not relevant to the certification request.
Okay, but that's how we've done it this time.
How you get it is up to you, right? So the
hard stop in 1 minute, just a time check.
Yeah, just these questions you can answer for yourself as long as you understand the certification request. You're supposed to be making a page on your website that's ideally branded, that tells people how to get your software and what it conforms to, and that page is supposed to live forever. It shouldn't be. Okay. It shouldn't be a thing in your build system, because it's not a job, because a job doesn't live forever. It's not branded. It's not consumer friendly. It's supposed to be a page a human can go to, see that you're compliant, do some digging to verify that you're compliant, or to their satisfaction, whatever that is, and download your stuff. So it should be a download page in your mind that got extra information.
Okay, I think that I got it. So we don't need to release anything to Central. We can just make really readable page, which will be permanent for a longer time.
Yeah, and the links need to be permanent, right? So you can update them, that's fine. Like if you start the page and it's pointing to something else and you update the page later, that's your own software distribution problem. That's not, has nothing to do with their certification request. What you're supposed to be doing and what we're trying to do is promote an industry ecosystem where anybody can very easily dig into the fact that you're certified, right? So
Okay,
the
got
download
it.
should market that you're certified and give them some basic information.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so my request, Martin, is for you to, or David, to answer that question in the meeting minutes, just so it's there. And then next week, the first topic is going to be reviewing the charter red lines. Second topic is going to be reviewing the pros, cons that Emily and everyone else are going to put together. Again, thanks Emily for leading it. And we are at the top of the hour. So great meeting, lots of great discussion by lots of people. Same bat time, same bat channel in 1 week.
Okay,
John,
thank you.
John, we also need to add the community document planning for next week. It's going to be closed on the 9th. So
Yes, yes, 3 topics. Okay, thank you.
Okay, everyone, bye.
All right, thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, bye.